The wind came first, low and angry, rolling across the high plains like it had a score to settle. Jedediah Cole felt it through the soles of his boots before he heard the knock. His ranch sat alone miles from the nearest neighbor, a stretch of hard land and harder memories. He had learned long ago that nothing good rode in on storms like this. Yet when the knock sounded again, thin and desperate against the heavy oak door, his hand paused over the latch. The fire cracked behind him, throwing shadows across walls lined with saddles and old photographs. Outside, something or someone was losing the fight against the night. He opened the door to find a woman standing where the lantern light barely reached. Her coat too thin for the cold, her hair whipped loose by the wind, eyes wide with fear and stubborn hope mixed together. Snow clung to her boots, and him, like the plains themselves, were trying to pull her back. She did not speak at first, just stood there trembling, hugging herself as if she might break apart. Jed had seen drifters, troublemakers, and liars before, but this woman looked none of those things. She looked hunted, worn thin by long roads and longer nights. She finally found her voice, asking for shelter, just for the night. Her words came out rough, as if she had not used them much lately. Jed studied her the way a man studies the horizon before a storm, careful and slow. The rules of the West were simple. Trust could kill you, kindness could cost you everything. Yet something in her eyes reminded him of his late wife. The same quiet strength, the same refusal to beg even when the world demanded it. He stepped aside, letting the warmth spill out into the cold inside. The woman thawed slowly, holding her hands near the fire. The glow brought color back to her cheeks. She told him her name was Clara, no last name offered, and he did not ask. Jed poured her coffee, black and strong, the way the land taught men to drink it. She wrapped both hands around the mug like it was an anchor. Outside the wind howled louder, rattling the windows, but inside the ranch house, the fire stood its ground. Jed felt something shift in the quiet, a sense that this night was not like the others. Jed's ranch was more than land and fences. It was a legacy carved from sweat and loss. His father had built the first cabin with his own hands. His mother planted cottonwoods along the creek that still whispered in the dark. Jed had buried them both on a hill overlooking the south pasture. He lived alone now, save for his teenage son Luke, who was away helping drive cattle for a neighboring ranch. The house carried echoes of laughter long gone. Clara noticed the photographs, a woman smiling beside a younger Jed, a boy on a pony grinning wide. She did not ask, but she understood as the night deepened. Clara shared pieces of her story like she was laying down cards one by one. She had been traveling west with family. Things went wrong, very wrong. She did not say how, only that she could not go back. Her voice broke once, then steadied. The West had a way of teaching people when to stop asking questions. Jed listened, offering nothing but his presence. Sometimes that was the rarest gift a man could give. When the wind finally began to ease, Jed showed her the spare room, simple but clean, with a quilt sewn by his mother decades ago. Clara touched the fabric like it was something holy. She thanked him, not with words alone but with a look that carried weight, the kind of look that stays with a man long after the door closes. Jed returned to the fire, staring into the flames, wondering what kind of trouble the storm had delivered to his doorstep, and why. For the first time in years, the house felt less empty before dawn. Jed stood on the porch, watching the sky lighten over the plains. The storm had passed, leaving the world sharp and new. Clara slept inside, safe for now, and Jed knew something had already changed. The West was built on hard choices and harder hearts, yet sometimes it tested a man not with violence, but with mercy. As the sun rose over his ranch, Jed Cole understood one thing clearly. The night he opened his door, he had done more than offer shelter. He had invited a new chapter into his life. Morning came slow and pale over the ranch, sunlight stretching across frostbitten grass like a cautious hand. Jed was already up when Clara stepped onto the porch. Wrapped in his spare coat, the land looked endless and unforgiving, yet calm after the storm. She stood beside him without speaking, breathing in the clean air, and for a moment it felt natural, like she had always been there. Jed handed her a tin cup of coffee. Their fingers brushed, neither pulled away. The silence between them was not awkward. It was the kind that grows from shared understanding. Clara offered to help around the ranch, her voice steady but hopeful. Jed nodded, unsure why he agreed so quickly. She learned fast, feeding chickens, mending small tears in fence wire, even brushing down the horses with a confidence that surprised him. She carried herself like someone used to responsibility, not pity. The ranch responded to her presence. Or maybe Jed only noticed things more now. The house stayed warmer, meals lasted longer, laughter found its way back into corners where dust once ruled. Luke returned 3 days later, riding in at dusk with stories and a grin. His smile faded when he saw Clara standing by the fire. Jed watched his son carefully, ready to explain, but Luke surprised him, tipping his hat politely, curiosity bright in his eyes. Clara met it with warmth, not fear. Supper that night felt full, in a way Jed had forgotten. Questions were asked carefully, answers given slowly, trust building piece by fragile piece. That night, after Luke went to bed, Clara told more of her story. She had been married once, to a man who saw her as property, not a partner. When she finally ran, she ran far. The West offered distance, if nothing else. Her voice did not shake as she spoke, but her hands did. Jed felt anger rise, sharp and unwanted. He did not promise protection, he simply said she was safe here. The words mattered more than vows. Trouble came riding in a week later. Just as Jed feared it might, 3 men on dark horses stopped at the south fence, dust trailing behind them like bad intentions. Jed recognized one, Caleb Horn, a man known for taking what he wanted and settling debts with his fists. Clara watched from the porch, color draining from her face. Jed placed himself between her and the riders, hand resting near his gun. The West did not forgive weakness, but it respected resolve. Caleb asked questions with a smile that never reached his eyes. Looking for a woman passing through, Jed answered calmly, saying no one like that had crossed his land. The wind picked up again, rattling the cottonwoods. Tension stretched thin as wire. After a long moment, Caleb laughed, tipping his hat, but his eyes lingered on the house, on Clara's silhouette in the window. When the riders finally left, Jed knew they would return that night. Jed and Clara spoke plainly. Danger was real. Choices had to be made. Clara offered to leave, not wanting to bring harm to his family. Jed refused, surprising them both. He said this ranch was built on standing ground, not running from it. Luke listened from the stairs, silent but determined. The boy was growing into the land, into its hard truths as the days passed. Jed prepared quietly, reinforcing fences, checking rifles, teaching Luke lessons he had hoped to delay. Clara stayed close, cooking, helping, belonging. The ranch no longer felt like a refuge borrowed for a night. It felt claimed, by courage, by loyalty, by the simple act of choosing to stay. And as the sun set red over the plains, Jed understood that shelter was never just a roof. It was a promise kept when the world came knocking again. The riders returned at dawn, not slipping in quiet this time, but making noise enough to wake the dead. Hooves pounding frozen ground, voices carrying sharp and careless across the pasture. Jed stood on the porch with the rifle cradled in his arms, Luke at his shoulder, trying hard to look older than his years. Clara watched from the doorway, fear pressing at her chest, yet steadied by the man in front of her. The sun crept over the hills, painting the plains gold, but there was no warmth in it, only exposure. Caleb Horn rode at the front again, his smile gone, replaced by the hard certainty of a man who believed the world owed him obedience. Words were exchanged, slow and measured, the kind that carried weight, because every man listening knew how easily they could turn into gunfire. Caleb accused, Jed denied. The ranch stood quiet, as if holding its breath. Luke clenched his jaw, fingers tight around the stock of his rifle, learning in real time that courage was not loud. It was standing still when everything in you wanted to run. Clara stepped forward then, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. She said she would not go back. Not now, not ever. The men laughed at first, but laughter faded when they saw she meant it, that she stood not behind Jed, but beside him. The first shot shattered the morning, echoing across the open land. Dust kicked up near Jed's boot, close enough to warn, far enough to invite a reply. Jed fired back, not to kill, but to end the conversation. Chaos followed. Horses reared, men shouted, bullets tore through fence posts and air alike. Luke fired once, twice, hands steady despite his racing heart. He hit a horse's flank, sending rider and mount scrambling away. The fight was brief but fierce. The West did not allow long battles, only decisive ones. When it ended, one man lay wounded, the others retreating hard and fast. Caleb's glare burned promises into the distance. As he fled, silence returned, heavy and strange, broken only by the wind and the ragged breathing of those left standing. Jed checked Luke first, gripping his shoulders, relief flooding through him when he saw no blood. Clara knelt near the wounded man, tearing cloth to bind his leg, despite every reason not to. Mercy was a dangerous thing, but it was hers. The man looked at her like he had never seen such a choice before. By noon he was sent away, limping and shaken, carrying word that the coal ranch was no easy ground, that some doors, once opened, would not be forced again. Days passed, with no sign of the rider's return. Winter settled in earnest, snow layering the land, slowing time, drawing the family closer together. Luke trained with Jed each morning, learning not just how to shoot, but when not to, learning restraint alongside strength. Clara became the steady heart of the house, cooking meals that warmed bones and spirits, mending clothes, tending wounds unseen. She and Luke formed an easy bond, laughter spilling from the kitchen, a sound Jed had not heard since before grief had claimed the rooms one evening. As snow fell thick outside, Jed and Clara sat by the fire long after Luke went to bed. The flames danced, reflecting in their eyes. She spoke of fear, of nights spent running, of believing safety was a thing meant for other people. Jed spoke of loss, of burying love under open sky, of closing himself off to keep from breaking again. Words came slow but honest. When he finally reached for her hand, it felt less like a beginning and more like a return to something forgotten, something true. Spring came late but strong, green pushing through white life, insisting on itself. The ranch thrived. Fences stood firm. Cattle calved healthy. Laughter rang across the fields. Word spread that the cold place was changing, not weaker, but fuller. When Caleb Horn's name surfaced again, it was only as rumor. A man who learned there were lines even he could not cross. Clara no longer startled at every sound. Luke stood taller, surer, and Jed found himself planning futures instead of guarding against ghosts. The day they buried a new post at the edge of the south pasture, marking land that would one day be Luke's. Clara stood with Jed, her hand warm in his, the wind gentle now, no longer threatening. The ranch stretched before them, not just as shelter, but as home, built on choice, on courage, on the simple act of opening a door when the night was cold. She had come searching for shelter, but what she found was more than safety. It was family, and Jed Cole knew, as he looked across his land, that some storms do not destroy. They arrive to show a man what is worth standing for.